Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene, but in that short time they've built up a very good reputation for themselves. If people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but in recent times they have been diversifying a bit and trying different things, some imperial stouts and some lagers amongst others. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've had from them once or twice before, if memory serves me correctly. It's a style that I know these guys can do very well, but also a style that kind of disappeared for a little bit, but has been getting gradually more popular again over the last little while. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit west of me here in Clipmanshire over to Glasgow. We're going to go to Yoker to be precise, and that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called 99 IBUs. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a West Coast double IPA. So yeah, this should be really quite nice. It's been a good while since we've had a West Coast IPA from Overtone. It was a couple of years ago that we had the Kanye West, which was a really well done one actually. And as I've said on the channel many times before, I love a good West Coast IPA. It's a bit of a shame that this style's taken a bit of a back seat, if you like. New England hazies are still kind of dominating the market. I do miss the days when we had the West Coasters, the black IPAs, and a little bit of the hazy. I do wish it would kind of diversify a little bit more. The cold IPAs seem to have all but disappeared, to be honest, as well. That's another thing. But yeah, the rye IPAs and red IPAs and things were always very good too. But yeah, definitely cool to see Overtone Brewing Company do another West Coast IPA. And from what I understand, this one is meant to be a big bitter beast, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, as I say, the 99 IBUs, 8% West Coast double IPA from Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker in Glasgow. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing Company before, and we will definitely add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again about Overtone Brewing Company. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, Overtone Brewing Company are based in Glasgow, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wei Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. But prior to founding the brewery, he'd been a home brewer for a number of years. People were really quite impressed with these beers, and so he decided to go for it and found his own company. But the name Overtone was chosen by him because of his love of techno music, and on a lot, or pretty much all, of the Overtone Brewing Company beers, you'll see these kind of roundel type symbols there, and they are inspired by the things you'll see at techno concerts and stuff like that. But yeah, Bo Wei in the early days hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire, in New England in the northeastern US, to come in as his head brewer, and he'd previously worked as a head chef but also as a brewer in England, New York and also in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, who do some very nice Belgian style beers. Make sure you check those out. But also involved in the company is Martin Conahan, who worked in the beer scene down in New Zealand for a good number of years. He does take part in the brewing a little bit from what I understand, but he does do mainly kind of back office things and things these days, working on the sales and stuff like this. But these days they've also got Charlie Irving involved in the brewing too, and he had previously worked for another local brewery through in Glasgow. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank, which is where my grandparents were from, and they began their operations there in 2018. But the brewery don't have a fixed range of beers. They're always brewing different things, but they were the first brewery in Scotland to really focus on the New England Hazy IPA as their core style. You know, that is what really made Overtone quite well known, if you like, and it was really when their beers went down to England and people down there started to discover who Overtone were, that they really started to kind of build up and gain in popularity. They were always well known in Scotland, of course, and well respected, but yeah, it was when their beers went down to the cities in England that Overtone really started to get some big recognition. But over the years they've built up the capacity of the brewery and got new fermentation tanks and all of this, but they have been experimenting a little bit with different styles too. They've brewed a number of imperial stouts now, a good few West Coast IPAs, a good few sour beers as well, and they've been experimenting a little bit with lagers and things like that too. But as of July 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 160 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Overtone Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's the end of your history section. Let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just like to have a wee bit of a closer look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. This one actually does remind me a little bit, I'm not sure if it's meant to kind of be a bit reminiscent of a pine cone or something like that, but it does remind me of some of these really bad 1960s or 70s wallpapers that you see on some of the old TV shows and things like that. But you can see plain silver top on the can there. It is of course the standard 440 millilitres, which you always see from Overtone, which you can also see that on the side of the can too, which looks very, very nice. This is another one that I bought at the larder, of course, along in Dollar. They always get a really good selection of Overtone stuff. But as we mentioned earlier, it comes in at 8% ABV. It's a West Coast IPA, this one. And yeah, the hops used in this one are HBC 522, Simcoe in the pellet form and the cryo form, Mosaic Cryo, and also Zappa. So I took a few notes on some of the hops in this one. You know, pardon me, Simcoe we know quite well, 12% alpha acid. It gives you a lovely kind of soft, juicy, passion fruity note. Mosaic, of course, 14% alpha acid, and it gives you this big kind of tangerine note. Zappa we've had once or twice before, but HBC 522 was a completely new one for me, so I decided to research that a little bit. So HBC 522, I should point out all four of these hops are American, incidentally. It comes in at 9 to 12% alpha acid. It was first released back in 2006. It's a descendant of Columbus, which is known for its big kind of spicy floral aromaticity, but apparently this hop is meant to give you kind of a big bit of grapefruit, but also some nice big orangey characteristics, but it's very, very kind of bright and floral as well, from what I understand. The Zappa hop is an American hop, of course, named after Frank Zappa. 8% alpha acid normally, gives you a bit of passion fruit, but it also has this kind of herbally, minty sort of thing going on. I have to admit, when I've had Zappa before, I didn't particularly like it, so we'll need to see how it turns out in this particular beer. But yeah, that's everything we need to say about the hops. We said earlier as well that it's an 8% West Coast double imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. The 99 IBUs, obviously a play on the 99 Red Balloons song name, if you like. So let's get this out into the glass and see what it's all about. Oh, it looks nice. It does look nice, and I can smell it already. Yeah, this looks good. Ooh, looking forward to this. So, there we are. That does look pretty damn good. Oh, this beer, it has got a few sediment particles and stuff floating around in it. I'm not sure how old this one actually is. Does it say when it was canned and stuff? Oh, it was packaged back in May. It's not that old actually. So yeah, it's a couple of months old. Maybe about 2 months old at the time that I'm filming this one, but it's not that old. Maybe I've just had my fridge a bit too cold or something, I don't know. But anyway, you can see the beer has poured kind of as you would expect from a West Coast IPA, but it's also got a little bit more of a kind of natural, hazy type quality to it. So yeah, anyway, before the head disappears, it came out with about a half to 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. You can see there's a mixture of kind of medium sized bubbles there and sort of kind of taller ones as well, which is great. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head, and that head incidentally is going to fade away to be a kind of thinner foamy layer. I'm not sure how well you guys can see the sediment particle floating around in this one, but there's quite a wee bit. I think I might have had this one in the fridge just a wee bit too long in comparison to some of the other ones. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this beer, if we shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of a kind of, I'd say it's quite a rich amber colour, to be honest with you, but not overly dark. So yeah, a few things about the West Coast IPA as a sub-style or style, however we're going to look at it. So compared to New England IPAs, West Coast IPAs tend to use primarily barley malt. New England IPAs will use quite a bit of oat and wheat as well, which is what gives them their haziness. And for me, there are 2 ways that the West Coast IPA can lean. They can be a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the Pliny the Elder from Russian River, or they can be a little bit more oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. It really just depends, but for me, that's the spectrum of a West Coast IPA. Going by the colour of this one, I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer, it depends on a few things. Type of malts that you use, the length of your wort boil, barrel aging, and any adjuncts that you put in. But those latter 2 variables don't often have to be cared about when it comes to IPAs of any description. But this one looks as if it's kind of somewhere in the middle. It might well be more of a beer that would fit the American IPA style category than being specifically West Coast. So American IPAs are somewhere in the middle of New England's and West Coast. A little bit more bitter, but still a little bit of the kind of hazy, creamy character. It's probably a fair description of that sub-style. But yeah, it looks quite interesting. This one, quite a lot of sediment in it. I think we should just have a look at the aroma though and see what this beer is going to give us. So let's do it. Ooh, that does smell really nice. Yeah. It's always cool to go to a brewery that you actually know quite well and just have something that's that wee bit different as well. That's one of the really cool things about it, and it's nice to see Overtone doing different styles as well. But yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty much what you would expect of a West Coast IPA, and I would say that it definitely leans more toward the kind of bready and biscuity side of the West Coast IPA spectrum. That's fair to say. But yeah, big kind of smooth bready notes in there, a little bit of sweetness in the malt base, a lovely big deep green component, and also some big oily fruits. But let's just break the aroma down for you a little bit more and describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, it's absolutely got a little bit more, yeah, it's got a little bit more of a it has a little bit more of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in the backbone. You've got a little touch of woodiness in there, but that's very, very minimal. Fresh white bread crusty backbone. There's a little bit of there's a little touch of wholemeal brown bready character to this one, but not a lot. And then you get this big, dense, and slightly sweet white bready character coming out of the beer. Yeah, the way this one goes together in that particular sense is really interesting too. There's a lot of bready character to this one. and it smells as if it's got I wonder if this beer, I'd love to know the malt base in this. It smells as if there might be a little bit of Maris Otter in this one, but also a good amount of German Crystal as well. It's definitely European malt that's in this. You can just tell from the nature of the breadiness. It smells different from the American two-row malts, but yeah, the aromas that you get out of this, the malt base, are really nice. Above the bready character, you get a little bit more of a you do get a little bit more of you get a mix of brown sugars there. You get a bit of a straight up sweet caramel, but there's also a little bit of this kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of the beer, and there's a wee bit of McVitie's Digestive Biscuit. The thing that makes me suggest McVitie's Digestive Biscuit is what I suspect is Maris Otter malt, because it's just got that lovely little bit of brown bread and the little bit of McVitie's Digestive Biscuit. It almost smells a little bit like buttery toast, this beer, to be honest with you. So that's really interesting for me as well. But yeah, I really like the malt base in this one. I think that covers what we need to say about that part of the aroma. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, the green component. Yeah, for me, the green component is quite deep and quite dank, and that's another characteristic of the West Coast IPAs. So when you make IPAs, you have 3 different types of hoppings that you can do. Let's use a 90-minute wort boil as our model. Early edition hopping takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, and that will translate to a deeper and danker aroma. Late edition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, that will give you a little bit of bitterness, but a lot of flavour and aroma, and it would translate to a very bright kind of character in that sense. But then you've also got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma, and again, it translates to a very bright aroma. But West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3 types of hoppings. West Coast New England IPAs, rely on late edition and dry hopping. But yeah, you can definitely smell this has got a deep, dank green component to it in there. There's a little touch of earthiness, of course, big kind of floral aromaticity as well. Quite bright, so there's a lot of late edition and dry hopping in this beer as well, but you do get a little touch of that kind of deeper, danker character too. And if this beer is going to be really high in IBUs, that absolutely makes sense from a technical perspective. But yeah, deep and dank floral character in there, a little bit of spiciness to it as well, but a good amount of kind of zesty grassiness, and I'm getting that little bit of mintiness that you're supposed to get from Zappa as well, so I'm curious to see how that's going to come out in the flavour. But yeah, interesting stuff from that perspective. On the fruity side of things, it's interesting. Like I say, that the more that I smell of this beer, the more of that kind of minty character that I get out of it. But certainly, you get a nice little bit of a strong passion fruit, for sure, which is coming from the Simcoe. You get a lot of big orangey character at this one, which will be the Mosaic and the HBC 522, and there is just that little bit stronger grapefruit as well, which I think again will be the HBC 522. Yeah, it's quite straightforward in its fruity aroma. Grapefruit, passion fruit, and a lot of orange, and then the minty character coming in behind it too. But you know, when it comes to West Coast IPAs, I always used to love the Amarillo ones, the kind of more orange-leaning ones. So I have a good feeling that this one might well be right up my street. But aroma-wise, it's pretty interesting. But I hope the Zappa, I've had bad experiences with Zappa before. I hope that Zappa doesn't dominate too much in this one. But yeah, let's get the rest of this guy out into the glass and see what this beer going to have in store for us. Still a little bit left. There we are. So yeah, this one is as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma, but this one needs to be tried now. So this is the 99 IBUs, an 8% West Coast Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Overtone Brewing in Yoker in Glasgow. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Pretty damn good, actually. It's good. The thing for me is, I love a good West Coast IPA. and it's good to have one that is true to how the style used to be. A number of the West Coast IPAs that you'll find these days, they have the right flavour profile, but they're just not as bitter and as punchy as they used to be. And it's kind of understandable. I can understand why breweries do it, because a lot of newer beer drinkers have come in with the lower bitterness, juicy New England IPAs. But yeah, this is the thing with that. This one, this is good. This is nice. I'm going to say straight away, this is a very good West Coast IPA, but it does the bitterness in this one. You can feel that. I'm happy with this. It takes a little bit of time to just kind of get used to this again, because it really, back in the day, back in sort of 2016, 2017, a few years into the channel, the IPAs were still the kind of big bold bastards like this. This is a bit of a nostalgia trip for me, which I'm really quite appreciating. So I have to say kudos to Overtone for doing something like this. And we're not drinking this beer at its freshest or in its prime right enough, but it works. It really does work. Let's break this beer down then and describe it a bit more in depth, as we always do. We'll start on that middle third of the palate then. So, the backbone of this beer, you can see that in the middle third of your palate, the backbone, it's absolutely a little bit of a kind of fresh, white bready bread crust. The further into the aftertaste you go with it, it gets drier and drier, and as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of just kind of woody character coming out of it, which becomes more and more prominent the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, fresh bready bread crust, a little bit of woodiness, and then above that you get a little bit of a kind of wholemeal, brown bready character coming out of the beer. So yeah, wholemeal brown bready layer coming out of this one. Above that, you start to get the white bready notes. I would say the bitterness in this beer, it's kind of a little bit hard actually to focus on the kind of malty side of the flavours, just because of how bold the bitterness is. I'm just not used to this level of bitterness in IPAs anymore, but it could just be the effects of the Zappa as well. Zappa, I remember, there's a few hops like Zappa and Cashmere that can dominate the flavours, the flavour of a beer, and I can feel that Zappa's kind of doing that in this one. But yeah, above the kind of brown wholemeal bready layer, you get a bit of a fluffy kind of white bready layer too, which is quite interesting. But the bread has a little bit of density to it, and a little bit of smoothness, and a very slight sweetness. So as I say, bread crust, a little bit of bread crust, a little bit of a kind of woody note in there, wholemeal brown bread, a fluffier white bread, and then above that you start to get some of the kind of brown sugary notes coming out of this one. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, this is what I like about this beer too. The brown sugars are nice and sweet. I always like this. I like double IPAs that let you know, bang, this is a boozy beer. And I think the West Coast IPAs tend to show their booziness a little bit more than the New Englands do, to be honest with you. The thing with New England is they cover their alcohol extremely well, even the big 10-11% things. But the West Coast IPA always used to give you that little bit of punch to it, and you can feel that in this beer. So above the kind of white bready layer, like I was talking about, you've kind of got a circle in the middle of your palate, and if you go to the dead centre of that circle, the epicenter, you get this really strong boozy caramel coming out of the beer. As you move a little bit further out from that, you get a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing going on. And then as you reach the kind of edges of that middle third of your palate, on top of everything else, there's a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character coming out of it, and that is really quite nice. This beer, it's kind of as I expected it would be from the colour. Again, it's right in the middle of the spectrum of the West Coast IPAs, because it's because it's not overly caramelly, and it's also kind of quite bready, to be honest, as well. So it finds a good middle ground. Actually, it shows you a little bit of everything. So a very well-rounded West Coast IPA, I would say, as well. Other than that, I don't know if we really need to say much about the middle third of your palate. So, yeah, I think we can move on to the back third of your palate then. But I love this beer. It does get sweeter, and you get more of the kind of caramelly notes out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. So, yeah. Let's go on to the back third of your palate. As I always say, the back third of your palate gets a similar flavour profile. They just come out at different intensities in comparison with the middle third of the palate. But remember, more sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more bitter and drier flavours come out further back. So yeah, in that border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. Sweet little bit of kind of wholemeal brown bread in the base and white bread above that. But then, yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got some really nice, kind of drier bread crusty character. A little bit of like Jacob's cream cracker above that. Then you get the wholemeal brown bread layer, which feels a little bit taller and more airy. Then you get the white bread layer, which again feels a little bit taller and more airy. Then above that, just topping off the malty side of that back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the drier aspects of the brown sugar just kind of creeping over the top there, which is really nice. And above everything else, you get the above everything else, you start to get the kind of yeasty characteristics out of the beer, which are very, very nice. So, the yeasty side of this beer for me, it's like a dense brown bready character that comes out of this one. So yeah, really big kind of dense brown bready character in there. Like a sweet brown bread I would add to that, and it's kind of wrapped in honeycomb a little bit. And there's maybe a very slight woodiness to it, but yeah, that sits above everything else on that back third of your palate. You can feel definitely that the flavour of the beer on the back third of your palate is taller. And then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of squashes down a little bit, as I say very often on the channel. But let's move on to the hoppy side of the beer, and we'll focus on the green component first off. And the green component in this beer is pretty damn powerful, I have to say. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there, but very quickly, as you move further forward in along the sides of your palate with this beer, you get a lot of floral character out of this one, and it's quite spicy. I'm guessing that's what they were meaning when with the notes that I read from the hop breeding company, HBC 522, that's what it stands for. They were saying this one is a very, very floral hop, and it's quite a spicy floral hop, and when it's derived from Columbus, it kind of makes sense, because Columbus would give you these big kind of spicy kind of characteristics too. But you do get that little bit of mintiness from the Zappa kind of lingering there into the aftertaste too, so you have very kind of spicy floral notes and a bit of mintiness in there along the sides of your palate. But round the kind of front curve of your tongue, you've got a really nice little bit of lighter grassy character coming out of this one, but it's quite a zesty grassy character that you get too, I have to say. So, on top of that, it just, yeah, this beer gets really, really bitter into the aftertaste. You can see, you know, it's definitely 99 IBUs at least. But yeah, I like that about this one. It's just taking my head, my brain and my mouth a little bit of time just to get round this one, which is good. But yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things, just to kind of round off this review. This is a proper old school West Coast IPA though. It really is a bit of a nostalgia trip, this one, which is great. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there, a little bit of brown bread in the base, bit of white bread on top. in the base of that front third of your palate is once again a bit of bread crust, the wholemeal bread, the white bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But it's quite an oily, fruity character this beer has. So let's just look at those fruity characteristics then. Yeah, for me, this beer is proper old school. It's got a really nice balance to the fruity side of things, actually. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you absolutely get that really strong, punchy grapefruit, which builds a good bridge with the kind of spicy floral sides of the beer as well. So yeah, big strong grapefruity character at the back of that front third of your palate. And as you move further forward, you get a bit of a kind of juicier and more oily, passion fruity character coming out of this one. And yeah, as you reach it kind of mellows out. You maybe get a very slight bit of mango out of this one as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. But then yeah, as you move forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the orange. It really is all about the orange in this one, and that's the mosaic and the HBC 522 that's giving you that. There's maybe a very slight kind of pineapple-y note on top of that, but yeah, big, zesty, oily, orangey character coming out of this one, and it works really nicely. Yeah, that's right up my street. As I say, this beer, because of how authentically old school West Coast IPA is, it took my mouth a bit of time to adjust to this one, but the more I drink of it, the better it gets. I get the sweet caramelly notes, the big orangey and grapefruity notes that I used to love out of this style when I first got into reviewing craft beers. It's such a nostalgia trip, this beer, as I've said. It's great, so thumbs up to Overtone this one. This is a big beast of a beer. Yeah, gives you everything you would want from an old school West Coast IPA, and like I said earlier, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. It has the bit of breadiness, it's got a wee bit of biscuit, and it's got the kind of oily caramel. It really finds a nice middle ground when it comes to the spectrum between the more bready, biscuity West Coast IPAs and the more oily, caramelly ones. This has got the kind of almost the sweet spot in the middle done very well. But yeah, I think we can round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's quite a slick, oily beer, this one, but West Coast IPAs are always oily, and you have to remember this is a perspective that's going to change all the time depending on what beer style is popular at the time, sorry. But yeah, this is a lovely kind of big oily West Coast IPA, which I think is great, but not the oiliest I've had in this style category. I would also point that out. But yeah, in terms of the bitterness with this one, it's it's 99 IBUs. It's at saturation point for the palate, so yeah, you get that mintiness and kind of spicy floral character lingering there on the edge of your tongue. The maltiness, as we said, has a bit of dryness underneath, a bit of smoothness and kind of sweet density in the middle, and you've got that big sweet, oily, caramelly character coming out of it as well, which is great. And then yeah, above that you've got the big oily, fruity notes too, a mix of kind of stronger grapefruit and oily orange, but then yeah, the fruity character in this one, I think, good big mix of kind of sweeter citrusy note and more kind of punchy citrusy character as well, but very old school West Coast IPA, and I can't knock this one at all. I think this has been a really interesting one to try, and it's cool to see. I like that, seeing breweries do things that they're not so well known for, but this is a really proper old school IPA. If you like me, you used to enjoy the old hardcore IPA from Brewdog, Overtone have taken it, done it, and made it even better, I would say. So yeah, big thumbs up to Overtone with this one. I think we can leave it at that with this review. So yeah, this one was the 99 IBUs, an 8% West Coast Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA from, pardon me, Overtone Brewing in Yoker through in Glasgow. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point very, very soon. But until then, check out my social media, check out theirs, and I will say slange it just now.